Uh, Thank you for everyone for being here. This is the first of these meetings that we are, I think I'm recording, right? Yeah, that I'm recording, and we plan to put this up on a new Werewolf YouTube channel, and we'll see if anyone is interested to watch that.
Ooh,
Yeah.
oh,
Um,
YouTube channel, so I get influencer.
yeah, yeah. Oh, here it's I didn't put this on the agenda, but it is at
Mm,
youtube.com/ at werewolf HPC because Werewolf was taken by
mm.
some video gaming YouTuber guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, but we can have a gaming channel.
We could have a gaming channel
We
too.
can have a gaming channel. We just have to kind of find out which games we are on.
Oh.
Uh,
Uh, Relatively light agenda today. At least as it sits right now, we'll go over action items from before and then on the discussion, something about documentation, and then mostly talking about 460 and hopefully releasing that very soon. But before we get started, anything to add to the agenda from any of our attendees today? Well, hearing nothing, let's go ahead and
no, we
get.
merged
Oh,
so
oh,
much. They are all
we did
kind
merge so
of.
much.
You,
Oh,
you fix so many small things, which I always said, oh, I'll fix them sometime, and
460 is going to be the best release yet.
I don't know. Yeah, it will be the best release because it's yeah.
All right, real quick, some action items from last time. So we had discussed creating a new Werewolf overlays repository with the intent with our new separated out overlay support in Werewolf. Once 460 is out, we can mostly start porting Griznog's overlays into this repository. So I'm not surprised to see nothing in here yet, but there is a repository for this now, and it has the same permissions that that the main Werewolf repository has. So it's there, ready and waiting when people have time to work on it.
I'm really hopeful to get time in the next week or two to clean up some of the easier, simpler overlays that are basically OS agnostic and get them in there. I mean,
Yeah,
configuring Munge is not dependent on what OS you installed Munge on, really. So
yeah,
that kind of thing, I hope to get in there just as some examples to get started.
Who's
very cool.
who's
But
gonna
Munch
write the
will hopefully
README?
go away.
Grizz, I would like to see after you get a couple in there, so a standards document of some sort to say if you're going to contribute, this is where you don't step over the line into operating system level or into uh different aspects of it. Because I know you've got it pretty well hammered out on your cluster.
I actually just posted kind of a brain dump in response to Todd Sayers on the Slack channel of where I'm headed with this. And I think I really need to get a couple of sample overlays into this so other people can get eyeballs on them and point out stupid things. And uh, because a lot of this stuff I've done in my environment, it's not going to map really well to other people's environment. So I just need to get something in there so people can start hammering on it.
Yeah. So Jonathan,
Yeah.
uh, might as well as being serious. Who's going to write the README for that page? And then the question I have is, how do we want to organize the overlays that go in there? It's going to be by subject, by uh, I would assume by subject.
Well, yeah,
Not just
I guess I don't know what subject means. Right now, I'm
what are the
looking.
overlays relate to versus just being a massive overlay dump? I mean, it should be some kind of organization in there, assuming that it grows.
That's what
Right
I was.
now, I'm imagining that we're in like a pre-release state of this, of just getting stuff that John has worked on into, a place where we can look at it and have that conversation. If Grisnog, if you are able to draft, like you put notes in Slack here, README on contributing to it and using them and that kind of thing, that'd be great. Otherwise, I'm expecting that once we see a few overlays in there, we would kind of reconvene on that topic and make some decisions
Yeah,
on how we would want to
I'll
reorganize.
convert I'll convert some of my notes into something for the README that's basically at least some straw man out there for somebody to bang on. The thing that I'm lacking right now is a naming convention for these, and I'm kind of leaning towards, since the world uses System D, and just accepting that. And pretty much my overlays break down based on systemd services, just having the overlays named like systemd.sshd.service or systemd.zfs.target or whatever, and having each overlay configure that specific thing in systemd, and then maybe a couple of more prefixes for other things that don't map directly to a systemd service.
This is why I was saying earlier that once you've gotten a couple of these hammered out, I think a standards type doc for this thing, how should you label these? Should they be one service or multiple services in one overlay? How should they refer to each other? Stuff like that. I
Yeah,
don't think that's going to come right away. Jonathan's right. This sort of should be a playground at first, and then
I'm
clean
I'm
it up.
s- I'm super regretful of all the times I tried to configure multiple things in a single overlay. So I'll voice my opposition to that idea up front. Collecting things is a job better done in profiles, where you make a profile that collects a bunch of overlays into a role or something, and then that role gets assigned.
I
The
agree with you.
individual, yeah,
I agree
individual
with you
overlays
now, especially.
themselves. Yeah,
Yeah, especially after profiles now can be additive and subtractive. So
yeah,
Okay, and thanks, John, for the README. If
yeah.
you explain everything that you want to do, because you're saying based on Slurm, because we have some overlays that we can probably provide, and I was thinking, okay, what about it like our Slurm overlays, right? Versus maybe you have Slurm overlays, and then we got to figure out how to split those up so people have some idea what they do.
Yeah, I think it'd be great if OpenHPC had Slurm overlays that did everything Slurm, right?
Oh,
And they were
I'm
just
sorry, I was saying
included.
me, we as I have to always be more clear. We as in Intel internal.
Uh,
We've
yeah,
got quite a few overlays for different purposes.
Slurm specifically, I used ChatGPT and dumped the slurm.conf man page in there and had ChatGPT build me a document that described everything that you could add, every configuration option and every option under it. And I think it would be pretty straightforward to build an overlay that just knew everything that was supposed to be in Slurm and what the defaults were as kind of a basis for this. So I have a lot of ideas around things like Slurm, just not a lot of time to hammer out the details.
I'm thoroughly impressed about dumping manuals into Chat GPT. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah,
It
that's a really good idea.
it scraped all the settings really well out of that slurm.conf man page.
Yeah, that's the Sloan man page is the only really documentation of Sloan. The rest all you read is source code, but then you get crazy.
All right. Anything else on the overlay stuff? All right. Next thing was that we were going to give Tim triage access to the main Werewolf repo. The goal here was to let him or have him participate in pull request um, reviews. Unfortunately, I have since in doing this discovered that while he can review a pull request, it is not considered sufficient to allow it to merge. So if people are willing, if the committee in particular is willing, we might up his to write so that he can participate in actual ready to merge level pull requests, but that is another
Yes.
decision. Yes?
Yes.
Christian and Jeremy, any thoughts
Okay.
from you guys? Plus on Christian? Okay.
I am okay with it.
I will plan to do that after this then. Next thing was that we had a brief conversation in our last meeting about what minimum Golang version we were going to continue supporting. This is mostly because of the Dependabot fixes coming in. against the repository well through Dependabot. And I was going to check on Rocky stuff. Christian, I don't know if you had looked at SUSE. I think I found that it's 1.24, but Rocky is carrying the
1.22, it's okay.
the back. So
And
1.22 is what we have to support at this point to continue to support Rocky.
Yeah.
And I don't know if any of the current Dependabot fixes would take us beyond that, but I think right now Werewolf is at 1.21, so we should at least be okay to go to 1.22.
Yeah, a quick question to Ian on the Ubuntu 22, or excuse me, the Ubuntu 24. Do you still have backwards access to the 122? Ubuntu is really good about providing a lot of packages.
I haven't checked for backwards access. I just ran through and app installed Golang and it dropped 124 in there.
Okay.
Um, 22 was a pain because as in chat, I had to go dig up an external repo to get 122 because Ubuntu 22.04 shipped with 121, no 120, I think, and it
Okay.
did not compile.
That extra repo, is that like a PPA or is it something more official than that?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a PPA. I'll have to boot up
Okay.
that head node and I can get the exact, well, maybe I have it in my notes because I'm smart and actually kept it in my notes. But don't quote me on don't quote me on the I'm smart part. Just the
I'll put it in the notes.
But it sounds like we're going to stay at 122 for now because of Red Hat has not moved.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct. So one more quick thing on the discussion before we move to 460. CIQ had a customer experience where they went to the documentation, clicked on main, and then installed the release candidate without realizing that they were getting the release candidate. So I made a unilateral change to the website where I just put main at the bottom of the list instead of the top of the list to hopefully make that less likely of an accident for people to make. So when we get 460 released, my expectation is that that would be 460, then 45x, or 46x, then 45x, and then main at the bottom. And something I'd like to do is in the future have like a latest release thing at the top that's just a symlink to the most recent release version instead of people having to know. Like presumably you would expect the top one to be the latest, but at some point that's a thing I'd like to do.
Can we just go back some minutes? You said we will go to Go 122 as minimum.
I think it is acceptable for Werewolf to go to
Then that's great.
1.22.
Now, one thing we can have an action item or pull request or issue for that. Then we can get rid of utils in slice. You know this function? So we have
Oh
our
yeah,
own,
yeah.
and now there is slices contained
Right. Okay.
from the standard library. I think we should try to get this own grown utils, just exchange them with Go standard functions.
Is it? Yeah. Is it just that? Yeah. Slices.contains.
Yeah. Sorry for interrupting. That was always bugging me that there is no
Yeah.
in slices function in the previous Go versions. This was kind of why.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Okay.
Actually, you know what? I'm gonna
Now you are the
put that
documentation.
up
Sorry
here.
to I derailed you.
No, that's great. That's where it should be. All right. So that leads us to the main discussion for today, which is the release of 460. So as Christian said, we have merged a whole lot. This is where we are since 460 RC2. So this is just since the last release candidate. Several bugs, but I've lost track of what they are because I've had a 4-day weekend and now all of my work has fallen out of my head, let alone anything that anyone else is doing. But where we are is 97%, and 3 of these things are documentation. So this here is documentation, this is documentation, and then this pull request is an overall doc reorg for 460 that I intend to also address those other 2 with.
When we are the documentation and this reorg of the documentation, what you have to add is that the behavior changed when you add a network interface. You have to explicitly set it that they're on boot var. This is not, or we set it in the command line option. I know that we can set it. Because this is it won't change I hope so. No, it can also change existing configuration for the upgrade. You have to check in the upgrade. So your upgrade tool hopefully will set all the old interfaces. If the on boot is not fails, it will not set it, but if it's true, that's true for per default, and now we don't set it true. So if you add a network interface, it won't come out at boot time.
Okay. We want the default behavior to be that it should be on boot unless it's set false, right?
Yeah, but that's more complicated to set than you. The thing is that the Boolean so that we auto-generate the command line bindings from the or from the structure. We have to test if we can set that. Yeah,
I'm taking a
that's the
note for it
thing.
regardless, but then we'll make sure
Yeah,
that it
we
does
have
something sensible.
to check this because I stumbled it over it again and
Okay.
just one more reboot because oh yeah, I know why it was not there.
So the pending pull requests that we have right now, Christian, I'll start with yours. You put this one in today, and I looked at it very briefly. It looks totally reasonable, but I haven't looked at it closely
That's just that's just coming up when you have big disks and the formatting takes too long. Then you have this timeout. It just means the ordering is not strict.
Yeah.
It after means that it's just after, whereas you still, if you want to that the service starts after the other one has finished, then the one have to require it.
Right. Yeah, so I'll review this later today. This should be pretty easy to get in. There's no case for this or there's no issue open for this. It's just something you discovered and fixed, right?
Yeah, I discovered that.
Welcome, Greg.
Hi.
Hello, hello. Sorry, I'm like
So,
super early, aren't I?
well,
No, it's pretty late.
we assigned everything to you. So that
Yeah,
leaves
wrong time zone.
two main functional PRs left. This one is that I noticed that I have a test environment that I had left over from when I was fixing the bond configuration, that I noticed that environment had DHCP assigned interfaces to each of the child interfaces in my bond. And it turns out that Network Manager, if you don't give it a static IP address for an interface, it assumes that you want it to be DHCP. So this change here just sets well, there's some tests for it. But then it sets where is the actual code for it? Not here. Here it is. It sets an IPv4 section to disable IPv4 configuration if you don't give it an IP configuration, is basically what it's doing. So any questions about this, or anyone, I don't know, Christian or Krishnog, if either of you would be able to review this and try and get this merged in.
It's kind of, who likes network manager? It is always breaking constantly, and the thing is, is this such a big use case, bonding interfaces?
Well, it's more just that. So we have actually had several people in Slack asking
Oh.
about the bond instructions that have been in the docs, but kind of not working for a little while. So this was originally motivated by me trying, excuse me, me trying to clean up the docs for this and make it work. And because we have tags and everything now, it's actually much easier to configure. But I just noticed my environment still had IP addresses on it that shouldn't be. So just fixing that.
Great. On my to-do list for net plan. Thanks.
Well, it might not apply to, or you just mean for to have
Yep.
bonding in general.
Yeah, testing bonding in general and see if it works. I mean, the whole reason I decided to leap into the net plan world in Ubuntu was it's pretty easy and flexible in the config file. But as we discussed elsewhere, lots of checking if something exists is required.
Yeah. This won't, what's in there today won't do anything in NetPlan. I have only implemented this for ifconfig and network manager, and I think one other thing, but now I'm not certain. But I didn't touch the NetPlan stuff.
Okay.
So
I'll play
you
around
can follow the same example if you want to use the same tags, though.
Yeah.
And then the other functional pull request that's outstanding right now is a much larger, but well, I'll say a scarier change
Yeah,
to
it's
the boot
scary.
process.
That's the whole point. It's kind of touching sensible areas.
But it's also why, if we can, I'd like to get it in before 4.6.0 rather than later. So observationally, the main goals here are to make the boot process more visible. And so there's a lot of extra logging in here. I did rename the kind of secondary werewolf init script. So historically, there's been a /init, and then when that's done, that calls into a /werewolf/dubdub init. I've renamed that second script to dubdub prescripts, I think, since that's primarily what it does is run the prescripts that are in werewolf init-d. But then I also converted the ipixie or the default.config to a menu-based config that then uses the menu to select which menu style it's going to boot. So the available ones are the normal single stage with compressed images with image extract, a traditional initRD based with compressed images, initRD based. This is iPixie's initRD, initRD based with uncompressed images, and then I folded the Dracket one into a menu option in the default template rather than having a separate template for Dracket, and that lets the configuration for Dracket on iPixie be the same as the configuration for Dracket with Grub, in that now you just have a tag that tells it which menu entry to boot. Rather than having to sub out the template to make it work in iPitsy. Grisnog tried this out, and thank you very much for that. And you pointed out some, frankly, surprisingly egregious bugs in it that I don't know how I missed, because I know I booted it, but I'm thinking what happened is that I had not rebuilt my overlays. And so I was still booting with the old version of it, not realizing I hadn't gotten in the buggy versions that I had made changes to. So thank you for catching that. I've incorporated your changes. But I understand that this is, as Christian put it, some sensitive areas. So I, again, would like to get this merged in, but I think it would be good to have strong sign off from people before doing so. I guess the one pending recommendation Christian suggested, writing logs not just to the console, but to like /werewolf/boot.log or something like that.
Yeah.
Of course, we can only do that with dubdub init, not with iPixie or Grub, but that it might still be good. It's like half useful, because if it doesn't work so much that it doesn't boot, then you can't get to the file. But if it works, but something didn't work in the boot, then you at least have that, and it's not only at the console. So I think
Yeah,
that's
the
probably reasonable.
IPMI would be a case where you can access the machine, but the
Yeah.
IPMI command failed.
Yeah, mostly it would be helpful with those prescripts, and then even more so if people introduce their own prescripts, it would log to that file, and then they would see it.
I had played a little bit with the syslog support in IPXE, and I was wondering, did anybody know if you if you use the kernel command line to set up networking, which I think we do with Drake-it. I haven't dug into that yet, but I think we do that with Drake-it. What's the earliest you can send syslogs to a remote syslog server?
I would think then, like in Dracket, you could probably do it, but I don't know.
It would be kind of cool to send them. I mean, it's not a this
I would
stuff is.
probably want to see that as an additional like issue to add on later than something to add to this PR though.
Oh yeah, yeah, because it needs to work with iPXE and all the other methods too, or
Yeah,
that would just get confusing. Or we need to drop everything for Drake-it.
one day. Any other discussion on this one that we need to have? Like, I know that asking for it to be signed off on is a larger ask, and I definitely want it to be reviewed with that in
Yeah.
mind. But
Check these on boot feature, please. If it's possible, perhaps it's possible that we can set it when you add a network interface that the on boot flag is. No,
well,
the
that's
main
different.
problem. The thing is that with our new parser, we can set the bool to fails in the configuration file
Hmm.
because it's per default fails. It should be. I had once this pull request to set it manual, because then when you would set it manually, then you could set it to true in the config file. You get the point?
Yeah, I think we're agreed on that. Like we'll need to make sure it works, but that's unrelated to this.
Yeah. Okay. I think so. And another, but I think that's now too late to the party. Should we say we set the grub boot to the default boot method and not iPXE anymore?
So I think we're not ready for it. One thing that I noticed is that asset key doesn't get passed properly with grub. So
Okay.
I was trying to fix that, and it will require pulling in additional grub modules, and it was going to be a big enough change that I didn't want to keep
Yeah,
delaying.
stay away from grub modules. The main
So
problem with grub modules is that they sometimes silently fail. At least for SUSE, and I think also for Red Hat. And the reason for this is all this boot signing. There are some requirements from Microsoft which are not properly documented.
okay. So what's going on there for us right now is it's in Etsy and grub and grub. So or no, it's actually in chain load. So this bit here is what's trying to get the asset key, but this command is not built into at least the Rocky Linux grub. This is provided as a separate grub module. And so if we want to use, and like you're saying, it silently fails and we just get a blank asset key.
Yeah.
So,
No, the thing is, if you could load modules into a grub, Microsoft won't sign your grub. So the thing is, normally shim does the so Microsoft does not sign the grub. So you CIQ or SUSE signs the grub, but you get assigned shim from
shim, yeah.
Microsoft. Microsoft tells you, yeah, you should not do that, and so at least
Oh, so the shim can't load modules. Is that what you're saying?
no, the grub.
Oh, okay.
It's at least ours, yeah.
Okay. So I hadn't
But
I was
it's a
trying to
sensitive
fix this,
area.
and
That's
yeah, I kicked it to 461 because it was just getting big. So from Christian, from your description or from your response, I'm taking this to mean more like what until 460. So my current plan, my current expectation is we get these three merged. This is Christian's thing, and then the two, oh, no, then the two that we just discussed also. And then we cut a release candidate 3, and then the next time we meet, or
Yo,
maybe even just a week.
release. No release candidate anymore.
No, so I at least no, we can't put in big things like this without another release candidate. Uh, but we'll put out an RC3, and then if there's no big bugs people have found, I'll keep working on this documentation update, and then that won't need a new release candidate. It's just documentation,
Yeah, that's
and then
okay.
we'll put out the
No,
release
I
after
also
that.
tested it today, your new login, so your new boot style, and it's working as expected. And I also like that you put in the iPixie boot menus.
I
The
do
only
want
thing,
to add in the file logging if you're still advocating for it before we merge. I think that's a good idea. But that's the only thing I would want to change for
just
it,
if you
unless someone
find a
finds a
clever
bug.
way for it.
What was that?
Just if you find a clever way for the logging.
Oh, a clever way? So
Yeah, kind of
what I
so
intend to
that,
do,
that
or
that
what I
if you do
wanted
an
to
echo,
try.
it will land in the logs.
Yeah, so what I was going to do is echo and then add a pipe to T
Yeah.
to /werewolf/boot.log. And I checked, at least in Rocky, T is in it's in like core utils or whatever. So I'll check on SUSE also, and maybe Ubuntu, but I expect that that's a sufficiently core utility that we can depend on it in here. Um, but that was my plan, was just to put it in, use T for it.
Yeah, it's in call utils.
Okay. Actually, Ian, are you still here? Oh, Alex joined too.
Yes, sir. I can check real quick.
Yeah. Thank
I'm
you.
pretty sure it's in core utils.
So I was going to do all of that logging in, I've lost it now, but in the /init. And then that way I would have when we, never mind. I was going to do it in init and www prescripts. But the main thing there, rather than having each prescript do its logging, that way anyone who wrote a prescript and then it got run by this process, those would get automatically picked up and logged. They wouldn't have to worry about logging to the file. So I'll just like pipe from the SH. So maybe, while we're waiting to hear from Ian on the package that is in, or, maybe we'll hear about that later. Any other feedback on the current state of RC2? Griznog, are you running the current main or the current RC2? And is anyone else doing so, or have anything else that they found that's broken that needs to be fixed before release?
I think I have current main as of a few days ago on all my production clusters.
Okay.
So I'm not seeing any. I haven't ran into any problems with it. It's been working great. I mean, it's still using my old config. I haven't rewritten all of my node configs to use merged profiles or anything yet, but at least out of the box, it hasn't had any problems.
And I'm expecting we'll hear more from you on resources as you update some of your overlays for publication in that repository also. But those are in tests and reasonably well tested these days, so that should be fine for you.
Yeah, I'll find out as soon as I start rewriting stuff because especially for AutoFS, that's going to lean really, really heavily on resources. That's going to be a
Cool.
huge section of YAML for my clusters of just AutoFS maps.
Well, that's all I have for an agenda for today. Anything else that we need to discuss before we call it for people?
T is core package in Ubuntu.
Awesome.
I just set up a Werewolf HPC Twitter account.
Oh, were you here in time for the Werewolf HPC YouTube channel then? Did you see that this exists?
No, but Rose mentioned that to me, and I'm like, I think we
I
should get a Twitter account too.
Great. Yeah, I would have grabbed Werewolf, but it was taken.
On Twitter or
No,
on
on YouTube.
I think Werewolf HPC is good. It was also taken on Twitter, by the way.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's everything then. So thanks everyone for being here. If you do
So
notice,
when then
oh,
you what's your plan to release the 460?
so yes, 460 RC3 as soon as these three are merged. And then if we have a week without any show-stopping bugs, then a 460.
Okay. Then this would be next week.
Something like that. If you get
Yeah,
these merged
okay.
today.
Okay. Cool. That's
Yeah,
really
and
great.
and part of the he's not here today, but Tim has been eagerly trying to get the next version of OpenHPC based on 460. So some of the feature work we've done has been specifically to make the OpenHPC documented process easier, and I think it's made Werewolf better as a consequence. So that's great. But I don't know if they'll end up having 460 be the release that's in the next version of OpenHPC, or if we'll get to a 461 or 462 by then. But at the very least, this sets the groundwork for an even better availability through OpenHPC. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. The only thing what I was now with you, I this big pull request where you change the improved logging during iPXC grub and WENIT would it be, or is it possible for iPXC also to have in the menu a point that you can boot to the BIOS? I think I added that to the grub one.
It's in the grub one. If I haven't looked into how to do it. If it's possible, then I am
Yeah,
supportive of
no,
putting one in
the
there.
thing is, it's for grub, it's quite easy. It's just
Yeah.
if it's if it's easy for iPXC, then add it, and if it's not, then that's
That's also the
the
kind of thing
problem.
that would be really easy to add into a 461 also, whereas
Yeah,
getting
okay.
the
Yeah,
larger thing done
then
ahead of
leave it.
time.
Then forget it.
Yeah.
There's an IPXE script in there that I got in a long time ago that is for booting from local disk.
Do you want to merge that in also then, rather than have a separate script for it?
You could. It's kind of kludgy. If you're booting the machine with legacy BIOS, you basically tell it, you can tell it which disk to look at, and I have it just kind of search for a bunch. If it's UEFI, you pretty much just have to fail and let it fall through.
Yeah. Well, again, easy to do in a 461 or 46 later also. But it's there. I guess it doesn't hurt anything to have it too.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
Oh,
All right.
thanks for all
Well,
your
thanks
work,
everyone.
Jonathan.
Yeah. Look forward to seeing this posted, and we'll see you all in another couple weeks. Hopefully by then we have a 460 out.
Okay, cool.
All
See you.
See you
right.
later.
See y'all.
Ciao.